All right, it's Friday, and that means it's another episode of Legal Tech Week, the show where our esteemed panel of legal tech journalists and bloggers talk about the top stories in legal tech and innovation from the past week. And it is August 2nd, 2024. I'm Bob Ambrogi. I have a blog called Law Sites and a podcast called Law Next. And let's introduce our panelists today. Victor, you want to kick us off?
Sure. My name is Victor Lee. I am Assistant Managing Editor for the ABA Journal, handling business of law and technology. My video kind of jumped there a little bit, so I hope that didn't mess with anything. But
Didn't see it, no. And Stephanie.
Hello, everyone. Happy Friday. I'm Stephanie Wilkins. I am the editor-in-chief of Legal Tech News at ALM.
And from the airport, Steve.
Hey everybody, Steve Embry. I write the blog Tech Law Crossroads.
And last but not least, Patrice.
Joe Patrice from Buffalo Law and Thinking Like a Lawyer, the podcast. I am here, though I don't know how long. I may have to surprisingly and unexpectedly cancel all of my plans for unknown reasons in case I might vaguely be the running mate. So I don't know if you've been tracking, like everybody who might possibly have any reason to be a running mate is clearing their schedule this weekend.
All
And
right.
I'm going to use that for every social engagement I get out of. So
All right. And any plans to be popping up on CNN or MSNBC or anywhere else over the next few days?
no, actually. So that tends to suggest maybe I'm not the runner. I don't know.
I guess that's a giveaway.
Or maybe it
yeah.
means you are, because you can't be it and comment.
Oh, that's right. That's right. But who knows? That's a good point. I mean, I could never. I obviously conversations that I may or may not have had, I can't share. So
All right. All right. Well, lots to talk about this week, and I think let's kick it off with a ABA ethics opinion. Victor, you want to tell us all about that?
sure. Actually, first, before I start, I was going to plug. I wrote a magazine feature for my usual law and pop culture thing about theories and how they're portrayed in how they're portrayed in mass media and whatnot. And I did get to throw in a Pauly Shore reference into this piece, so I'm actually very proud of that. So everyone go check it out if you can. And then, but yeah, but the instant matter is this week let me put the link in here. This week the ABA released an opinion, an ethics opinion talking about AI and what lawyers should do, lawyers, law firms, legal professionals, and companies should do before they use it. I mean, very often with a lot of these ethics opinions, they're pretty straightforward. They don't really cover a whole lot of new ground, and they say a lot of things that are kind of obvious, and we've talked about this on the show, that the things that like most competent lawyers would already be doing. But it's always good to spell these things out. Obviously, they say that people should maintain their level of competency, duty of confidentiality. Possibly they should disclose what tools they use to their clients if it comes to that. For me, the kind of the interesting thing about it was to talk about fees and how attorneys should account for using these tools when they charge people. So obviously these tools are potentially a huge they're a huge time saver. And so if you have like a 20-hour, the example was if you have a 20-hour thing that takes you like only 15 minutes, obviously you can't charge for 20 hours. You got to charge for the 15 minutes. Again, might seem pretty straightforward, but you never know. Especially with it's always good to in this profession, it's always good to kind of make sure people are on notice and make sure people have just that information out there, so that they can't say, oh well, ordinarily this will take me 20 hours, so therefore I'm going to charge it. So but ultimately I thought it was a pretty again, like an opinion that most people, especially people who are very cognizant of technology and artificial intelligence and have been following the pros and cons of it. I think most people are probably going to just read it and be like, okay, whatever. But for people who might not be following it or might be thinking about getting into it or integrating it into their practice, it's probably good to kind of just go through the what it says and what the guidelines are, and to make sure that you stay within the lines and that you're not playing with something that you don't understand.
Yeah, I thought it's kind of interesting because the day it came out, I was presenting with Dr. Maura Grossman, which is why I'm here in Toronto. And of course, we've got into it, and she made an interesting comment that she thought when it came to the necessity to communicate whether you're using generative AI or AI tools to a client, that the opinion was, if not overly restrictive, it was very suggestive that in most cases you would, which was a little bit different than the tone, at least, of the opinion that came out of Kentucky. And it came out of Kentucky. It was, you don't have to disclose the rote use of generative AI tools or any other tools unless you are going to somehow reveal information relative to the client client representation of the client. So that was an interesting comment, and I went back and reread it. Not sure after rereading that's entirely true, as it seemed like that they were a little bit more detailed in the description of that than perhaps some. And the rule is, you have to give the client information so that they can participate intelligently in decisions. I'm not sure that often would require. And then you have to reasonably consult about the means being used, and that both of those are kind of gray areas. So I guess it's sort of open to interpretation when you get into that, and whether the danger, the risk, and all of those things necessitate telling the client. But as I told the group in presentation at the end of it, it probably doesn't hurt to tell your client in any event.
Now, I was thinking, I didn't think it was too earth-shattering. I thought it was kind of a common sense. When it came to the billing stuff, like, well, should I pass it on? It reminded me of, I'm old, not quite as old as I need to be to make this comment, but like enough that this was still around in my day. I remember conversations about electronic research and using Westlaw and Lexis, and it's like, oh, well, you're not in the library because you're using this, but it costs money. Like, how do we pass on the amount of money that we're paying Lexis for the subscription versus the time that you say, like, and all of those debates, which had more or less finally been settled about when I started, it seems like the same debates all over again, right? Like, oh, you're using this AI, it's saving you a little bit of time, but you're spending, like, how do you do? It seems like what is old is new again to me.
Yeah, I thought, well, I think first of all, kudos to the ABA for issuing an opinion on something that's actually timely, as opposed to when they did their opinion on listservs a few months ago, 30 years or so after the advent of that technology. So it's good that they're talking about something that the rest of the world is talking about. But yeah, there's really nothing earth-shattering in this opinion. It is exactly, I mean, what they say about generative AI is exactly the same standards that every ethics opinion has said about any kind of legal technology, really. That you have a duty of competence when using the technology, and you have a duty to be careful about confidentiality and to supervise your staff who are working on it. The one thing that's different about this opinion, in any of the opinions probably that have talked about generative AI, is the acknowledgement of the fact that this technology has a tendency to hallucinate, and that a few lawyers appear not to have figured that out. I think there was just another case this week, as a matter of fact. Ralph Losey was writing about another case this week of a lawyer citing made up stuff thanks to generative AI. But so the opinion says, look, you may not know this, but you have to check the output of this stuff. You can't just go file it with a court or share it with a client or whatever else without checking the output. We all know that. We've all said that on this show 100 million times, I think. But that's really, I think, the only difference between sort of the legal ethics the ethics as they apply to generative AI as opposed to the ethics as they apply to any other kind of legal tech out there, I think.
So I actually wrote an interesting story recently I think it was late last week.
Interesting, if I may say so myself. But
Oh no, it was no. No, I think it was early this week, actually. Yeah, no. Well, I mean, it wasn't my story originally. I was given it and I ran with it. But it was an interesting story of a guy who's unauthorized practice of law. He is not, in fact, a lawyer. He was faking being a lawyer. Actually, I see Jessie's in the audience. She's the one who tipped me to this one. Guy who has unauthorized practice of law. But one of the wrinkles of his unauthorized practice of law is it seems as though he attempted to access somebody's Lexis Plus AI account. And I kind of walked away from it with, not to justify unauthorized practice, but kudos to this fake lawyer. Like, he understood not to use ChatGPT, which we've seen licensed lawyers go crazy with hallucinating systems. This kid knew, you know what, maybe I should get an actual, like, bespoke legal, device that is using AI in a way that is going to give me better results. I was impressed with that part. Not to, congratulate unauthorized practice, but that was an interesting angle, I thought. But I wrote it.
If you're going to cheat, you should cheat well, right?
Well, I mean,
congratulating fraud, in other words.
I mean, the exact my headline was harnessing the power of AI to elevate fake lawyering. And I used all the buzzwords that we hear at all of these things, like, leveraging these, synergies. But I do think there is something to be said for we've seen actual lawyers get sanctioned for using non-legal based AI. And now we see a guy who unauthorized practice got away with it for a lot longer than he probably should have, because he was attempting to do things the right way. Like, he was trying to cheat in a way that was actually going to give him good answers, which I was very intrigued by. Yeah. Table stakes, as it were.
by the
Slowly,
way,
I'm turning.
let the record show that Gene O'Grady joined the panel after we made all our introductions, but Gene
Yes.
needs no
Yes.
introduction. So,
Fair.
But Gene, were you going to
I'm
say
good.
something?
Oh, hi, I'm Gene O'Grady, and I'm late. My computer is finally working. And I write the Do You Be Strategic blog, and I write a monthly column for Legal Tech Hub that I will be talking about later.
You will be.
Can I jump in with one thing on the ethics opinion that I thought was interesting?
Yeah.
I thought it was interesting that, they said, lawyers cannot charge their clients to learn how to use generative AI, but if the client demands that a specific generative AI tool be used, then maybe they can bill part of their time in learning how to use it. I just thought that was an interesting little, but it was like, you should talk to each other and figure out the billing in that case. I just thought that was a weird little, you can't bill to learn how to use it, but if your client picks the tool, maybe you can.
Yeah, that was interesting. I actually had one other, I don't know, it was interesting. One other sort of bone to pick, I think, with the opinion is it said that lawyers, what was the, it said something like lawyers need not become GAI experts. Rather, lawyers must have a reasonable understanding of the capabilities and limitations of the specific GAI technology that the lawyer might use. And I guess that surprised me only in that I think lawyers' duty of competence requires that they have a broader understanding of sort of an area of technology, not just a specific, this is just a specific tool. Like if you're using Westlaw, maybe you need to understand something about Westlaw. But to me, they should be understanding, I don't know, how generative AI might impact legal technology more broadly, or how generative AI might impact their clients and the representation that they're undertaking. Are there issues there that they should be aware of or thinking about? So I would, to me, the duty of technology competence always goes beyond any kind of a specific, or should, I would think, go beyond a specific technology tool, a specific product, into understanding a class of technology and how it might impact your own practice, but also how it might impact your clients and the cases you're working on. But then again, I'm not in ethics.
We had an interesting discussion. We had an interesting discussion at the presentation about whether a lawyer should talk to their client about how generative AI could benefit the representation and or reduce fees, and that was kind of sort of along the same lines in a sense. But it was a interesting discussion about instead of thinking about telling the client we're using it and oh my God, look at all these things that could happen. Whether you should say, we really think it would be a good idea if we used it to do these things.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't have any insight into how this opinion was written or anything, but I mean, I would assume that they probably thought, okay, well, the general rule of competence for technology, knowledge of technology, probably covers, all that stuff anyway. So now that there's a new tool that comes in, we'll just write the opinion about this one tool while you would still be obligated to like understand how it fits into the overall technological ecosystem and how it benefits or potentially hurts your client, and not just focusing on the tool itself, but just general issues around it. I mean, maybe they thought that would be covered by the existing rule, but yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, it points to the need for law firms to have professionals on their staff who understand this technology, and who can help them implement and choose and whatever else this technology. And perhaps that could be like law librarians or knowledge management people or something. Gene, what do you think?
Well, thank you, Bob. Very smooth transition. Bob, I ended up closing up the spreadsheet, so if you could post my link to my story, that would be great.
Got it here.
So I wrote, stuff had been percolating in my head since the AALL conference a few weeks ago, and one of I'll talk about the one thing that the one real anomaly I noticed at AALL that I had never seen anything like this before. Oh, the CIA had a booth trying to recruit law librarians at AALL. Now, I've never seen anybody try and recruit law librarians on the exhibit floor before. So I paid attention and I went up and I spoke to them and I got the brochures about what they're looking for. And they have started something called the first time in 50 years, they have created a new directorate called the Directorate of Digital Information. And they want creative, innovative knowledge experts, and they came to AALL looking for them, which I thought, that's pretty amazing.
I love this so much.
And then I was at, there was a Thomson Reuters sponsored a pre-conference event that I was lucky enough to attend. And our former panelist, Zach Warren, gave a presentation. He now works for the Thomson Reuters Institute. And he gave a really interesting presentation about a recent study by Thomson Reuters, the Thomson Reuters Staffing Survey, which looks every year at, or maybe only since 2017, but they have been looking at trends in staffing. And from 2017 to 2022, overall staffing in law firms has trended down, although the cost of staff has been going up as if firms are hiring more sophisticated people with different kinds of skills. So, but between 2022 and 2023, there was a very, very sudden reversal in the hiring of law library and knowledge management people. And so that resulted both in headcount changes and the cost invested. The one area of library staff, and this is no surprise to me, that did go down was library clerks. I mean, and that was probably pushed along by the pandemic, because a lot of what clerks did was manage all the print, and the print since print was pretty much decimated by the end of the pandemic, all those jobs, or a very, very high percentage of those jobs.
Somebody has to put those pocket parts in.
Slowly I turned step by step. Anyway, yeah, the pocket parts weren't bad. It was the interfilings that were a friggin' nightmare. So anyway, one of the interesting things that I thought was that although overall in all market segments, hiring for law librarians and knowledge managers was up 13%. ALM 100 firms, it was up 6.9%. ALM 200 firms, it was up 15.2%. And mid-sized firms, it was up 19.7%, which really suggests that mid-sized firms, and Thomson Reuters, the survey defines that as firms with 50 lawyers or more and outside of the AmLaw 200. So those firms and also the AmLaw 200 are really investing aggressively in the kinds of people that can help them manage information, their internal and external information, which I thought was, I mean, I've always thought people didn't hire enough law librarians and pay them enough. Am I frozen again?
No,
Oh, I'm
You're
frozen
good.
to
we
my
can
You're
hear
good.
you. We can hear
It's
you.
funny because
You're-
I'm frozen on my own screen.
your
but
face is
okay.
Your
not
video,
moving.
your video is frozen. Your audio
Okay.
is not.
Yeah, we can hear
Okay,
you
well,
fine.
Okay, well, I look pretty stupid, so can somebody? So
You look
somebody else
wise.
can take it away.
You look like
We
you're
should get one of those-
sharing a lot of knowledge.
We should get one of those cards that has like the technical difficulties, like be right back
Yeah.
kind of thing.
Right.
Just put that.
So that was pretty much all I was going to say. Questions, children?
Oh, I was gonna
Children would
I was
rule
gonna-
me out, I guess.
interrupt for a second just and roll with it in a different way. You know, you talk about the CIA recruiting. I don't know if the other non-legal tech this week, it came out that the Army spent and the Department of Defense spent a bunch of money giving The Rock for his new spring football league that then didn't work. And they determined that they actually ended up losing 38 recruits that they otherwise might have gotten by giving him $11 million for recruiting. So I worry for the future when we learn that AALL has actually cost the CIA so many great recruits, you know?
I actually found the CIA's opening for a law librarian. I just put it in the chat in case you're curious.
I had the impression they were hiring more than one. I think there's
Well,
more than one.
There probably are, but that's just the one
Yeah,
listing I
yeah.
could find.
Yeah,
Something for Jane to do in her retirement.
yeah,
Become
no,
a spy.
no, they were actually begging me to, because they found out I lived in Virginia and they were begging me to apply.
Ooh, 00 Gene.
I mean, she might already be
License-
doing it. She just can't tell us, y'all.
That's right.
Tell us,
And
yeah.
that's why they've already hacked into my Zoom, so I can't. You're all
Yeah.
actually going gray on me, so I think they are.
Dou-
There were hints
Double-
in the background and they had
Replaced by
to
a
stop it.
doppelganger, actually.
Yeah.
00 Gene license to research. It's right there.
Oh, Joe, I love that.
Let's do this.
Shaking, not stirring things up in the
Yeah.
legal profession.
Oh, there we go.
Whoa, that was great.
We haven't had a
For
theme like this.
her eyes only.
I can't keep up with you two.
Oh.
All right. So just on that point of the Thomson Reuters report, I mean, to me, that totally makes sense. And I think, I suspect, Gene, you've written about it before. I know I've written before, just my opinion. And actually the AALL's own surveys have sort of underscored and validated the idea that the role of I don't even like the term law librarian anymore, frankly. I don't know if
agree.
you do, Gene, but they are information professionals or whatever, but their role just becomes more and more important as technology gets more and more sophisticated, and they're often the only adults in the room who really know how to use some of this technology, who really know how to evaluate and benchmark this technology. It just makes total sense that law firms are going to be putting increasing emphasis on law librarians and knowledge management people and information professionals, whatever you want to call them, as AI becomes more pervasive in law firms. So it makes total sense.
And the other thing that that Zach talked about at the end was, and I don't know if you've all seen this, one of the other pieces of the Thomson Brain Trust had come up with this three waves of generative AI impact, and the first wave is called the optimized law firm, and that's when they will start to replace some associates and paralegals with generative AI. And the second wave is deeper re-engineering and productizing things and commoditizing things. And then the third wave, I hate to say it, they call the robo-lawyer. And that's when there's a handful of partners and one associate, and and a bunch of clients. I don't know, but they think that this robo lawyer phase is going to come.
Oops. Now we
The
lost
CIA
everybody.
is all over
They
us.
got her. They got her, all.
And Steve, they took out Steve too.
No, that was Canada's version of the CIA, which I don't even know what it's called, but I'm sure it exists,
It was just the
right?
Mounties.
I
Does
mean, they
Canada
have
have
to.
spies?
It was just
Josh-
the
Josh
They
Mounties.
have to.
Josh,
This,
Josh
is,
probably
this is where our Clio participants should let
Yes.
us know.
I see. I see.
They get
Maybe.
they get the best horses. They're the Mounties.
Okay. Of course, Joshua Lennon would know that, but even though he's not
Oh,
Canadian,
I think Sam was there too.
yeah.
Like, I think we got other people. Yeah.
All right.
CSUS.
Well,
All right,
well,
yeah.
So as we're talking, he was talking about sort of the changing role, perhaps, of associates in law firms, and Joe, you've got a story this week about how AI is perhaps mimicking the role of associates in law firms in some way.
So yeah, no, absolutely. So I've written a few things in the past. One that I wrote that we talked about on this show a while back was somebody who said, we need to stop trying to make AI be more human, which is a selling point that a lot of vendors use. And an expert told me, like, it really is good at accelerating the non-human tasks we currently ask humans to do. We should lean into that and have it do more, processing hundreds of thousands of things and creating summaries without trying to pretend that it's going to replace people. And I was like, oh, that's an interesting option. So I wrote about that. Another article I've written that we talked about on this show is one where I questioned a lot of vendors giving me the argument that legal research, it gives you the right answer, quote unquote, right answer. And I've always been a little skeptical of that as a litigator. I was always like, yeah, but I don't want the right answer. I want to be able to see how I can navigate around the right. The lawsuits happen because my client's wrong. I need to figure out how actually it works out. They're good. And so something that gives me the right answer is not actually what I want. I want to be able to do that next thing. And so when we talked with those as my bookends about like how humanness in law works, I had a conversation with Paxton AI, who has come out with before we get into anything else, they ran their system through the Stanford test that we've talked about recently over the last few weeks. And it got like 94%, 93 point something, but in this house, we believe in rounding. Point is, they did really well. And that was the headline for a lot of folks. But for me, they talked about how they now have a confidence meter that you can type in your question. And it'll say, hey, we have low confidence in this, or medium confidence, or high, which is not unusual. Other vendors kind of have something like that in some way or another. But it would do that. They say there are reasons why theirs is different. Put that to one side. It then would suggest, hey, you asked this question, we found some stuff. Here's how you can make this a little bit higher confidence. And that got me thinking about process and how legal research, in my mind, is a discussion. And the kind of callous way I put it is the whole job is telling the first year to go back and bill more hours. You don't expect the first year to come give you a memo and that's the answer. You expect them to give you something that then you go, yeah, but did you look in Wisconsin probate court for something that will win this constitutional case? Whatever it is, it's usually stupid, but you have that conversation and that back and forth. It's a dialogue between the seniors and the juniors. And the whole idea of how this confidence meter was structured in a way where it was intending from jump, not from like, oh, we're going to give you the right answer. It was, we're going to give you an answer and then tell you where you fall and what you can do. I was like, that's kind of a change in the thought process of AI that understands that legal research is a dialogue and that legal research is something that you put in, if it comes back and says, well, what did you think about this angle or that angle? Or maybe if you gave me these more facts, I might be able to find more, because I was able to find more, but you didn't ask that before. And the more we think like that and refine these models in a way that provides better and better future suggestions, the more I'm willing to suggest it might have a real future in research that in the past I have made fun of.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting because it emphasizes it does emphasize the iterative nature of using and
Yeah.
working with an AI tool, which a lot of lawyers may not even be all that familiar with it. But I was wondering as I was listening to you, I wrote about it also, and I was looking at the article I did, and I realized I didn't check to see, does it give you the same prompts every time? Like if you have a low confidence
That's
answer, are the prompts exactly the same? Like the tips in the
and
screenshot they provided are like ask one question per
they're very
session or be
generic.
precise, that kind of thing. So they're very
And that was
generic. Yeah.
and that was my thought too. But it got me thinking more as a framework. So they are very generic, but they're already thinking of that. And I can already envision somebody going, yeah, what if we ran one algorithm that's giving you this answer, and then we also applied AI to looking at a bunch of other stuff and saying, we have high confidence that if you added this to it, you might get this answer, or if you added this to it, you might get some other stuff. And like you could, if you're already thinking that this is the framework that products should follow, you can start tailoring and building better the kind of dynamic suggestion of, okay, well, this is your answer for what you asked, but we also found a lot of good things happened if you expanded it to X. Is it okay if we expanded it to X or not okay if we expand it to X? Can we look at the you said Southern District of New York. Can we look at the Eastern District, which you totally can. They basically, as a litigator, they basically believe in each other's work. But could we do that? If the system is in a position to go like, holy shit, there's a bunch of good stuff over here, do you want me to go down that road? That's a smart way of making this work for research.
Yeah, I thought it was good. The other thing, the part I wrote about, I mean, I wrote about the news as well, but I focused a little bit more on the benchmarking that they did. And, again, it was interesting that you did this benchmarking and found that their research product achieved about a 94% average accuracy on legal research tasks, which apparently, if you look at the Stanford study, is a whole lot better than Westlaw. But who knows? Maybe you have to be a little bit cynical or skeptical when somebody does their own benchmarking. It's always better when it's independent. But that said, I think kudos to them for being transparent about this and doing this benchmarking. And they put all the data out there. You can access all the data. It's available. You can see what they did. And this seems to be kind of a trend. I mean, we've talked on this show recently about some other companies that have done this, have been putting their benchmarking data out there. And I think it wasn't all that long ago that people were, kind of critical of some of the companies using AI or some of the legal research companies in particular for not being more transparent about their algorithms. So it's a good thing to see these companies doing it. And it's interesting that it's more the startups that are doing it. We're still not seeing, we saw Stanford's benchmarking of Lexis and Thomson Reuters, but to my knowledge, they haven't put out any of their own benchmarking or really kind of released any more data, that sort of their own regarding how they're ranking their own performance or evaluating their own performance.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I was going to say. And what I liked about this Paxton thing too is that, I mean, their willingness to be transparent about it and put it out there, and they put the things out on GitHub and whatnot, because I remember in response to the Stanford study that, a lot of the initial reaction was like, well, we don't agree with their benchmarking. Our internal benchmarking shows that our numbers are a lot better. And we're like, great, well, can you show us that? And it was like, well, no. We're like, well, cool. Anyone can say that we test our things at a better rate than you did. But if there's no way to show it, I can tell you that, I can make up any numbers for anything you want to test me on internally. I'm not saying they did, but it just becomes, a game of, well, I said this, you said that. And so I do applaud them, like you were saying, Bob, for a willingness to be transparent and put it out there. And I agree that it is the smaller players that are pushing this benchmarking, and I applaud that. I'd love to see where it goes.
Yeah.
A conversation in the chat that Dennis Kennedy raised is that you can actually do a lot of this with good prompting now, but
Yeah.
lawyers don't necessarily know how to prompt that way. So the question is, and this is a thing, I jokingly pretend that the company I'm going to create, my startup, is going to be called Promptizer. It creates actionable prompts. They're not what you want, but they're actionable prompts. But there is something to the idea that teaching folks how to have that dialogue and how to use these tools to create that dialogue from jump is a real thing. And you know what? It's not even technological. It's human. I worked with a lawyer who was very esteemed in his field and had practiced for many years, and he would ask questions I knew he knew the answer to 3 or 4 iterations into a project because he hadn't thought of it from jump, but he came up with it again. Like, that happens. And so the idea that we could prompt from the get-go correctly is probably unrealistic. So you want a system that is going to be able to think through and add those things, as opposed to depend on people to prompt it right from the beginning. But it does show how powerful it could be if it was created that way.
Well, no, and a lot of people who don't necessarily know how to prompt or are just getting started, they don't even realize that you can iterate on your prompts at all, which is problematic. The ability to add things when you don't realize them actually can help you a lot.
Stephanie, did you have a story this week? There's
No,
nothing in our.
I'm in the process of writing one for days and I haven't gotten around to finishing it. I mean, I can talk about it a little bit and publish it after, but
If you'd like.
yeah. So
we're here to share.
Yeah, I will finish it. But Cooley Go released Cooley GoBot. It's actually called GoBot, which I love. But so they've put a chatbot on top of Cooley Go, which is cool in itself. But they've also sort of 10 years since Cooley Go came out. Cooley Go is Cooley's platform essentially for. It kind of was started for like early stage startups, but it's not just startups. Anything for business formation, like from beginning through end. All these business resources, but they've given it a complete overhaul redesign in the last decade too. And so, I mean, the website's really pretty cool. But on top of it, what I didn't know that they had is they have tons and tons of free VC data out there that I did not know was available. And it's just, I mean, you could just spend hours if that's of interest to you going down that rabbit hole too. But they have rearranged all it. So the chatbot pulls from Cooley Go documents and anything on Cooley.com. And just honestly, the amount of data they're making available in the VC space is impressive. So I will eventually have this article written up. It's not even gonna be a long article. It's just been one of those weeks. But yeah, this really fun stuff. And I just thought that, I mean, that follows, last week, them, hiring David Wang away from Wilson Sonsini. So it's just been Cooley. I mean, they've always been up there. And if you had to think of like the top 10 firms of like most tech savvy, advanced savvy, I mean, I would put Cooley on that list, obviously. But seems like they're all in on cementing that, and I've had 2 conversations with Cooley in a week, which is fun. So I can give you the website of the new Cooley Go stuff. But yeah, that's what I would have put in here as my article. And
So we're done.
We
will wait till Monday. Has anybody watched any of that Sunny on Apple TV? This show about a robot.
There's a new robot show I don't know about.
Yeah,
I'm seeing trailers for it a lot, but yeah, I haven't watched it.
It's I'm blanking on her name. Rashida Jones stars in it.
Yeah.
A little weird, a little strange, but she sort of involuntarily inherits this robot that kind of follows her around all the time. But I was picturing when you said Cooley GoBot, I was picturing that robot kind of wandering around the corridors of the law firm, walking up to lawyers' desks and offering to help.
But yeah, I mean, the GoBots were like the unsuccessful. They were like the Betamax of the Transformers back in the.
So they were actually and very Betamaxy. They were first. I remember them before Transformers, and they had a TV show before Transformers, and I knew that, but now just from this conversation, I've looked it up. They both aired the same year and then the same month, but GoBots came out like 10 days before. And I'm like, ooh, yeah, no, GoBots really were the thing first. And then Transformers were just bigger and cooler. And like, because GoBots were very like
They were made of
Mattel
iron. They were made-
Matchbox.
Well, yeah, they
Yeah.
were made of iron, I think, or yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And they were Matchbox size. And then
Yeah.
Optimus Prime was like this big. And you're like, oh, well, yeah,
Yeah.
it's going to be bigger. Yeah. But yeah, they did not get Orson Welles to do a voice for them, which Orson Welles did, in fact, do the voice in the Transformers movie.
All right. Well,
Excellent point.
something else I wrote about this week was this question of which law schools have AI classes, and you may all remember not too long ago that the American Bar Association came out with this survey that said 55% of responding law schools have AI classes, and the problem was there had only been 29 law schools that had responded, so 59% meant, or 55% meant just 16 law schools actually had courses, at least according to this survey. And you know, no foul really to the people who did the survey, because they were clear about the fact they didn't get a high response rate and they were just reporting based on what they got. But at the time, I picked up on the fact that some of the major media outlets that covered it didn't seem to understand that nuance. And in particular, there was a Reuters news story that just flat out said more than half of law schools now offer classes on AI, which was not true, and which
No.
still remains on the Reuters site to this day. So apparently they don't watch this show on Fridays at Reuters, but that's their problem. But anyway, so after I wrote that, April Dawson, who's a law professor teaches tech classes and associate dean at North Carolina Central University School of Law, alerted me to a site that she and Dan Lina had created called like AI Law Profs or something, where they're essentially tracking more, I think, on a self-reported basis. In other words, they're tracking law professors who are teaching AI courses in law schools and those courses as well. And Dennis Kennedy, who's in this chat here today, is one of those professors. But so I went through that, and it gave a kind of a different picture of exactly what's going on. I think it's still an incomplete picture, but it did turn out to be that there are about 62 law schools with courses related to AI, and given there's about 200 law schools, that means there's about 31% of all law schools currently offer courses on AI. Even for me, just eyeballing the list, I could see that there were some courses not on their list that I know of. Like, you know, I've talked to Ed Walters a lot from Fastcase, and I know he teaches a couple of different courses on AI and the law.
The Law of Robots.
The Law of Robots.
I
and he's got
love
a
the
couple of
title.
others, yeah. But he's not on their list. So it's still an incomplete list, but maybe a little bit more, definitely a little bit more complete than the ABA survey. And then it was also just kind of interesting to see which, I also went through and figured out of the schools that are offering courses, which ones offer the most, or how many are they offering. And Suffolk University Law School takes the trophy with 7 courses being taught related to AI and the law. And then followed by North Carolina Central University School of Law with 4, and the University of Missouri Kansas City School of Law with 4, and Dennis Kennedy. Dennis Kennedy here at Michigan State has 3. They've got 3 courses. I think Dennis is teaching all 3 of them there. So kudos to Dennis and Michigan State. But you know, again, it's interesting. It makes me, I'm sure there's more going on. As a matter of fact, also after I posted on LinkedIn, then of course I heard about a few more there. So, you know, it might be useful to just kind of start to try and create a more public-facing listing of these somewhere and get people to add courses that they have. Just It's just interesting to know what law schools are doing on this topic, I think.
No, definitely. I actually had coffee yesterday with Matt. Is it
And see, I'm getting
Demore or
corrected already
Demore?
in the chat.
Oh, it's Matt. It's either Demore or Demore. He's from Cornell Tech, Associate Dean at Cornell Tech. And they do. I know they had joint courses. That's where that's Ed Walters is an adjunct professor there, along with at Georgetown. But I did not realize that they actually have a 1 year. They offer an LLM in law, technology, and entrepreneurship at Cornell Tech, and I didn't realize they had. I knew they offered plenty of courses that were cross-listed with the law school, but I didn't know they had a full LLM for it. So he and I had a long discussion about trying to figure out a more comprehensive list of the different schools and the different professors teaching these kinds of courses too.
Yeah.
So, all right, listen, we need to have a serious talk here. So we lost Jean because she went on. She's talking about the CIA, so they cut her off. We lost Steve, who was in Canada at the time. I just looked at our internal document for planning. He was going to talk about surveillance at the Olympics, which is of course where Canada got dinged for cheating in soccer. Both countries are out to get us. We CSUS or whatever we're supposed to say about Canada's version of this. They are out to get us. CIA, CSUS. We need Caroline here so MI6 can come after us.
Oh, it's worse. Steve just told us as he was talking, they canceled his flight. So I think they're detaining him in Canada.
Sure they are.
Where did Steve?
Like they canceled that drone flight over the other soccer fields.
Maybe it was that Putin needed some new hostages to replace the ones he just freed. Did you know there's sort of a legal tech angle to that? I'm sorry, I'm blanking on Paul Whelan, is that his name? Who one of the hostages who was just released? His brother is a law librarian.
Oh yeah,
and the head of the law library maybe at UCLA Law School, and does a blog about legal tech and law librarianship. So there's always a legal tech connection to everything.
There really is.
I'm blanking on his name. I'm blanking his brother's name now, though. But anyway, Dave Whelan, maybe? I don't know.
Wow.
San Diego Law Library, Public Government, not Law School.
There we go.
All right. Yeah, that sounds
amazing.
Right.
So he was going to talk about the Olympics. We're not going to follow up on that because he's not here. Other than, cool Olympic stuff's just happening. I don't know. Anybody have any thoughts about the Olympics?
Well, I don't understand how so if you fly a drone over
There we go.
How do you not get kicked out? Like why? Like what they should kick the whole team out, right? Instead of just kicking the coach or whatever. I mean, I don't get that.
They sort of did because they gave them -6 points or something, which basically made it impossible. But part of it, I think I got to assume part of it's logistics, because how do you deal with the group if you don't have them play the game? Because it's the group stage. Somebody has to play games.
I think in soccer, if you forfeit a game, you lose 3-0. So then, or something like that.
Right.
They do it like that. So then, I guess but it doesn't do much for the other teams, because then they don't get to play and they don't get to. I mean, they can rest their players, but they might not be as sharp then.
Right. Yeah. So there are reasons why you need them to play that scrimmage. But yeah, it was wild. That was a wild legal tech issue. I didn't see any other legal tech angles necessarily to the Olympics, but who knows?
I got a random PR pitch about how there's all these specific apps for helping people navigate around the Olympics, and they're asking for these ridiculous data permissions, and they're sucking up all this insane amount of personal data. But people are just saying, yeah, go ahead, take it, not surprisingly, but yeah.
When all you need is the gold zone. The gold zone. No, I mean,
if you're in Paris, navigating.
If you're in Paris.
Yeah.
Oh, that's not that's no good. Gold Zone is great. Just like jumping from one thing to another. If it's like exciting, it's great. It's the NFL Red Zone, literally the same host. It's the NFL Red Zone, but for the Olympics.
There's also the controversy about the religious imagery in the Olympics.
So
About the surfer walking on water.
Oh,
yeah,
stop.
well, yeah. The
I thought you meant the non-religious
I know.
imagery in the opening ceremony.
Well, that's
No,
what everybody's been talking about, but it's like
there's Kevin Durant did a dunk that was the Ascension painting by somebody I can't remember. Yeah, no, it is true. Actually, this is an AI-ish related thing. So there's an AI account, something like fine art but sports. I can't remember what it is. I'm sorry. It's something like that, where the person takes screen caps of sporting events, puts them there, and then the next thing is some fine art piece, and he can always find some fine art piece that links up to it. And apparently back in February, I didn't know this account until recently for some Olympic stuff, and he found like a perfect abstract art piece that represented something that happened in the men's gymnastics. And I was like, wow. And somebody was like, this person never misses. And apparently the history of this account is back in early this year, I think February. People were speculating like, what kind of AI does he use? How he could analyze this and then feed it into this and find this, and then maybe that's how he does it. And a huge conversation happened about how he might be using AI to be able to match all these things up. And the guy actually responded. He's like, all of those sound really cool. I actually just have however you pronounce the word, eidetic memory. He's like, I actually just know 120,000 artworks off the top of my head. But it was funny that like it caused this AI conversation of like, could you do this with AI? Art, but make it sports. Yes. So Jonathan brings that up in the chat. Yeah.
Yes, and I also just saw that Mark posted this, and I want any excuse to talk about our pommel horse hero, our new national treasure.
Well, I mean, our old national treasures are still good. Like Simone Biles, just
of course,
jumped like 400 feet in the air.
I know, but this guy showed up. We literally shipped him to Paris to do one thing. He's a self-proclaimed nerd who we just took him there to do the pommel horse, and he just pommeled like crazy, did his thing, and went back to being like, oh, on Instagram, did you see that I solved the Rubik's Cube in under 10 seconds? And like, that's his life. So he's like, I don't need my glasses to do the pommel horse. I do it by feel. I'm back here to taking a nap. Oh, it's my turn to win a gold? Great.
I know there's some people who are of an age that they understand The Simpsons. I actually saw a thing about him on the pommel horse. It was like created as like a 4-panel comic with Homer going from a famous episode, the pretzel episode. Homer going, "Aw," but that little guy hasn't done anything yet. And you know when he does it, it's gonna be cool.
Oh yeah, he's so like he's the hero we didn't know he needed.
But he's from like Penn State or something like that. Like, as a lifelong Big Ten fan. And by big lifelong, I mean I'm now in the Big Ten as of yesterday. I don't root for Penn State people.
The Olympics gets rid of all of those allegiances, Joseph.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Well,
see, we need to have
talk about before.
Yeah.
Well, okay. So since next Friday is like the Friday right before YieldToCon, is there anything we want to do? And like, when we usually do our pre-conference, like, here's what we do and don't want people to do.
Well, we could.
That's a great idea. And we should also ask, and we should ask it again next week. But right now, hey, anybody, if you know parties that we should be knowing about and going to, let us know. If you want meetings with us, you should be letting us know. Those sorts of things.
Also, apparently everybody in the world only wants meetings on Tuesdays. If you all want days other than Tuesdays, that will increase your odds of having meetings.
What is that?
Why Tuesday, everyone?
Tuesday.
So again, I've already told this to some people. Steve Embry, who's was with us and probably will be out of Canadian jail by then because they're on the metric system for years. Anyway, the point is, whenever he gets out, he was going to crash some of my meetings for those of you who've already scheduled with me. Some of you all are all welcome to do that too. But yeah, if you want to only have Tuesday meetings, maybe we could do more buddying up, but we need to know that in advance.
Yeah. We didn't get too far with our trying to possibly group schedule some briefings,
Should
right?
have.
Like that didn't happen too well.
Well,
I mean,
the
we were trying.
problem, I'm the problem. It's me. I put out my calendar. I put up my calendar before all the rest of you did because I was like, I feel like I need to do this. We should have like done as a group, like, boom, we're all together.
And once it's
Doesn't
on your calendar, it
mean
can't change. Is that?
that doesn't mean the
Yeah.
rest of us can't have group meetings just because Joe felt they need to be early and special.
Yeah. Well, apparently, maybe I'm not supposed to say that. Caroline and I got some group meetings scheduled together, thanks to Jesse, who's in the audience here. So we'll do a couple of group briefings anyway. You're all welcome to come to our group briefings.
Steve and
But
I have a couple. I will give the rest of the panel at least my calendar if
maybe
you
we should
like
just like
want
set up a
to.
Google Calendar or something. Maybe it's not too late.
I mean, that's what I've got. So I'll send that
Yeah.
around to you if you want to like try and get in.
All right.
Cool.
Well, I think that's it. I think we've covered all the legal tech topics and a few others, and
There we go.
we'll be back
We're already
next
having
week for our pre-ILTA final countdown show. And until then, everybody have a great week and have a great weekend. See you all then.
Bye, everyone.